Like the Seif clock tower, they are colourful reminders of Kuwait. Incorporating to safeguard the nation's health. Building schools to prepare a new generation of Kuwaitis for the future, a future far removed from Kuwait's difficult seafaring days of the past. But one way that Kuwait is helping others is by providing generous economic aid. Aid to countries like Rwanda, which with an average per capita income of $210 a year is one of the poorest countries in the world. One of Rwanda's principal In addition, Kuwait has its own independent agency for direct funding of third world development projects, the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development. The first, and for many years the only Arab aid agency, the Kuwait Fund, was set up in December 1961, on the eve of Kuwait's first anniversary of independence. It has turned out to be a most generous birthday present to the world. In 20 years, the Fund's small but dedicated staff, headquartered in a modest office block in downtown Kuwait, have disbursed over $3 billion in outright grants and easy repayment loans, making the agency a vital in the world. For many years, the fund was headed by Abdulatif Al-Hamad, now Kuwait's Minister of Finance and Planning.
The Kuwait Fund being the first development agency established by a developing country and one of the oldest development institutions in the world, as we today celebrate the 20th anniversary of the creation of the Kuwait Fund, is a unique institution in its own approach to development aid. The development aid of Kuwait is one of the aid programs that has always been untied to specific purposes but related to specific functions in the beneficiary countries. The motives of the Kuwait Fund operations are neither commercial nor political. The resources made available to developing countries from the Kuwait Fund are available for purchases from any source of goods and services to the maximum benefit of the beneficiary. It is the policy of the Kuwait government that the aid program of Kuwait has no strings attached to it, neither financial, commercial, or political. This unique feature gives the Kuwait Fund greater impact in its development effort in third world countries and gives the Kuwait Fund greater chances for having a more successful support for the development efforts of the developing countries. As the Kuwait Fund goes into its third decade of its existence, looks at future evolution of its policies and practices and tries to benefit from its previous experience in order to improve its methods and conditions of operation in order to be able to extend its assistance in a more effective and a more beneficial manner to the beneficiary countries. So it is a philosophy that the Kuwait government has always adhered to, that aid should be part of its international responsibilities to mankind. It should be in respect and appreciation of the mutualities of interest between the rich and the poor of this world. It should be a motive for greater promotion of better dialogue between the North and the South, and building greater bridges of cooperation and communication between the South and the South. The Kuwait Fund, as an institution that has evolved and developed, is unique in being able to assist towards achieving these motives.
During its first 12 years of operation, the Kuwait Fund advanced loans only to needy sister Arab states. Among them was North Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the Middle East. Ironically, Yemen was once one of the richest nations in the region, ruled by the powerful Queen of Sheba and exporting frankincense and myrrh to ancient Rome. The main reason for its rich agriculture-based economy was one of the world's first great dams and irrigation networks, built in the 7th century BC at Marib. But in 750 AD, the Marib Dam collapsed, rainfall quickly ran off into the desert, and the Yemen went into decline. In the early 1970s, as a result of a study financed by the Kuwait Fund that attracted economic backing from around the world, Yemen's agricultural fortunes began to revive. The Kuwait Fund itself pumped around $60 million into an international project to build new dams, repair dilapidated irrigation channels, and purchase modern farming machines. As a result of the Kuwait Fund's backing and hard work by the Yemenis themselves, lush crops once more flourish on the Tihama coastal plain. Grain produced at Tihama is helping improve Yemen's balance of payments deficit by reducing the country's dependence on foreign food imports. Today, Yemen's marketplaces are again full of locally raised fruit, vegetables and livestock, and there is plenty of food for all. Farmers' incomes have risen substantially due to increased yields, and some are already able to repay the loans that help them modernize their farms. Gradually, the desert that swallowed the land after the collapse of the Great Marib Dam is beginning to bloom. In 1974, the Kuwait government increased the fund's operating capital five-fold and extended its mandate to providing aid to all developing states. By economic difficulties exacerbated by overpopulation and shortage of financial resources. A particularly pressing problem for the Pakistani government in the mid-1970s. After 1974, increased revenues from oil enabled Kuwait to expand its foreign aid program considerably. Today, through the fertilizer plant near Colombo, was built with the help of the Kuwait Fund. Together with the World Bank, Saudi Arabia and others, the Kuwait Fund is also helping harness the waters of the Mahaweli Ganga River. It's the biggest development scheme in Sri Lanka's history and is expected to provide 400,000 jobs, create farms for 200,000 poor families, and create 300 megawatts of energy. Besides, the people of Papua New Guinea belong to a multitude of tribes, speaking over 700 different languages. Since 1961, the Kuwait Fund has provided over 275 grants and loans to countries in Asia, Africa and Oceania. Even countries in southern Europe are benefiting from Kuwait aid, and it is not uncommon to see delegations from countries like Cyprus, where the fund is financing road and irrigation projects, meeting with officials of the Kuwait Fund.
That constructed the 2 lanes of the roads, all the drainage work, and acquire the whole land, so it will be a second phase, the adding of the other 2 lanes.
Each loan application is carefully assessed by fund officials. Only sound economic projects, never prestige projects, are approved. The fund never finances projects single-handed, preferring instead to share the burden with other aid-giving agencies. For maximum impact, the Kuwait Fund coordinates these efforts with those of other countries, and by identifying problems in poor countries, often acts as a catalyst in getting worthy projects off the ground. Kuwait Fund loans are always soft, with interest rates as low as 0.5%, grace periods of up to 10 years before repayment starts, and anything up to 50 years to repay. When a loan has been approved, an official signing ceremony takes place between senior officials of Kuwait and the recipient nation. The signing ceremony, however, is by no means the end of Kuwait's involvement in the project. Fund officials carefully monitor the progress of each project, not only from their desks, but also on site.
Direction for the canal, The canal here? The canal here.
Ah.
In the lower side there, it's covered in this way to have it as the sluice way. And this is the division between the canal and the sluice way there.
Ah, I see.
This is the canal.
Fund officials also assist in planning, review specifications, help to select firms to carry out the work, and even help to ensure that projects are managed and operated properly.
The strength of the structure is all right.
No, one thing. You see, you are seeing this one here, and it is only the second season they are having it. The other, it is a 1 season, no?
The main goal of the Kuwait Fund is to help strengthen the economic sinews of poor countries so that eventually they will be able to stand on their own feet.
Upper stream has been broken from the second one.
And irrigation networks, projects that economists call infrastructure, meaning the basic elements on which a nation's economy is built. Projects like power plants that will drive a young nation's developing industry and power new transport systems. The Kuwait Fund loaned Tunisia over $32 million to modernize and expand the La Goulette power plant and electric grid system. Part of the loan was used to install 2 25-megawatt generators at La Goulette and erect high-tension cables from the power station to Tunis and Bizerta, 1,000 acres of farmland. The Majreda Valley project also covers preparation of new land, construction of utilities, settlement of farming families, and provision of modern agricultural machines. And providing new land for young farming families, the project is aimed at diversifying crops grown in the valley. By introducing modern farming methods, the output of traditional crops has been increased. One already important result of the Majreda project has been once the jungle has been cleared, fast-spreading cover crops are planted to prevent soil erosion, keep down weeds, and regenerate the earth. Applied like bandages to a wound, they quickly recarpet the denuded ground. To house the rubber farmers, engineers lay roads, install water and power lines, and build homes, schools and clinics, whilst Felder officials select the families that will live there. Preference is given to large, landless, low-income families, and because rubber is a hard crop to tend, to those with rural backgrounds whose head is no older than 35. Besides 10 acres of rubber trees, each family gets a simple, unfurnished frame house and a small garden. As the rubber trees mature, so does the community. The settlers set up committees to run village affairs and organize social, religious and sporting activities. They clear and plant their gardens and fix up their new homes. Finally, these can be tapped all year round, with the exception of the rainy season. The economic life of a rubber tree is 25 years, and the average annual yield of dry rubber is about £1,000 per acre. The farmers take their latex to a central collection point. Here it is weighed, graded, and loaded into tankers, which take it to Felder factories for conversion into dry rubber. Rubber is Malaysia's main export, and plantations like Pelong not only provide a permanent livelihood for landless farmers, but also foreign currency earnings to pay for other development projects. Until their crop starts coming in, Felder pays each family a living allowance and provides utilities, fertilizer, machinery, medical care and education free. Once he starts producing rubber, Felder pays the farmer for it at current market prices, minus about $75 a month for 15 years in repayment for the land, trees, home and other facilities provided by Felder. In return, the settler takes possession of a home and plantation, worth at 1982 prices about $3,000 an acre, that ensures his dependents a prosperous future. Looking at Pelong settlement today, it is difficult to imagine that 12 years ago it was uninhabitable jungle, nor that the people living in these trim, well-furnished homes arrived less than 8 years ago with virtually nothing but the clothes on their backs and a few cooking pans. After deduction of Felder dues, the Pelong settler earns about $150 a month. Most have television in their homes, all have motorcycles, and some even have cars. Pelong is not an isolated example of what economic aid can do. The Kuwait Fund is helping finance a similar project at Terengganu, where, in the least developed part of Malaysia, Felder is carving a 25,000-acre palm oil plantation out of the jungle. Kuwait development aid has no political strings attached. As their record shows, the Kuwait Fund helps governments of all political slants. The money was spent on building a new control tower and training operating staff. The tourists come to swim. Kuwait has neither machines nor technology to sell. On the contrary, Kuwait aid actually benefits Western nations by generating orders for American, European and Japanese products which developing nations need to carry out development projects. Projects which these countries could not afford without Kuwaiti aid. For example, a plant in Jordan to process potash drawn from the Dead Sea, to which the Kuwait Fund has contributed $40 million. In fact, leading Arab investment bankers argue the indirect benefit to industrialized countries of Arab aid to developing countries exceeds the industrialized countries' own aid to developing nations. At a phosphate mine in Jordan, for example, much of